And the biggest error I made is Will went from the top team to a second team. And instead of me saying, these are the reasons you went down and this is what you need to get better at, I said, you went down because that coach, that program is awful. They don't know what they're doing. You're this, you're this, you're this, and it's them. And I watched him turn to, I'm not doing anything wrong. They did, and I don't need to get better. What's the 5 Ps? Do you remember it?
Proper preparation prevents poor performance.
There you go. It doesn't matter how much money we get. If we don't close, it's no money, right? So no close is no money. I'm everything that I am because of my dad's death. And I wouldn't be as successful without his death. Welcome to the Jason Theory. I'm extremely excited to have a friend on, a coach of my 6-year-old son, a mentor for him, Shannon Suffoletto. Did I say that right?
You did.
Nice. Mental performance consultant. I find this extremely interesting. Even if your kid's not involved in sports, mental performance has to do with anything, even just being happy, period. It's all part of it. We will tackle a little bit more of the sports side of it and how to deal and how to parent better than I did the first time around, and the second, and the third I've gotten it. I'm good on the third, but we're gonna run right into that. So let's talk about introduce yourself, and then let's talk about origins, how you got into this, and like your passion.
Yeah, thank you for asking that.
Yes.
It's been a journey, I
Yes.
guess. I'm about 24 years now in Chicago. So this August was 24 years. And I moved here to go to graduate school. One of 5 programs in the nation was Columbia College Chicago, and it had dance movement therapy as a master's degree.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was a dancer. So
Okay.
my relationship to sports and the discipline and all that really is related to the arts and in the arts and in dance. I was a dance and psychology major.
Okay.
Always wanted to work with people, always wanted to be in the field of psychology. And when I learned that I could actually marry the two to study dance movement therapy, the belief that the mind and body are connected, you facilitate change in the body, the mind changes, facilitate change in the mind, the body changes, they work together, but really honing in specifically on the work in the body, using the tools in the body, increasing body awareness to create those shifts as a dancer was just amazing to me. So that's how I arrived in Chicago. Everything I do, my work is always stemmed in the mind-body connection. That's important to me. The artistry of the work and of health and of mental health is important to me. So my roots are in dance, the mind-body connection, and mental health. That's really where I started.
It's so interesting you say that because there's so many thoughts just hit me. I could talk an hour on what you just said, and we don't have to do anything else.
Right.
But it's really interesting because when you think about anything that has to do with complex movements, posture, balance, it's all being in that calm mental state to perform those movements. I mean, I think about, my eldest over the last 6 months has started getting really into weightlifting. And when I think about that, when I sit on a bench or I sit somewhere to lift, I don't think about the weight. I literally just get into a zone and feel the muscle and what it's doing. And when you really get to that point, not only do you have these massive gains, you don't get hurt, but that's when you really feel it. And people are always like, people golf, do this. I lift weights. That's what I love to do. And when you're lifting weights or you're dancing, the pleasure of feeling your body and doing it and then performing it, it's like no other high. I mean, it's awesome. So and I'm a big mind over matter person. I'm just not going to get sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't, right? And I just I'm not going to get sick because I think I think people underestimate how much power your mind has over the physical.
Yeah.
You know?
But also interesting the way you described that though was more of the physical over the mental.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because you really talked about like what I'm interested in and what I'm really is I'm being in my body.
Being in the body.
So I'm really not allowing the mind to take over. I'm actually integrating them.
Yeah, it's great.
They're together. And when we're together, when that togetherness and integration happens, anything is possible. We are our most authentic selves, our truest selves. Peak performance, is possible. The ability to be in the present moment is happening. I didn't have to tell you how to do that. You did that by focusing in your body, not on it, but in it.
How do you train people? I mean, this is a long question too, but how do you get to a point where you can get people to be in the present? And what are exercises for 15 and under to be present? Because once you're present, everything else is cake.
Yeah, it really is, right?
Yeah,
it comes from there.
Yeah, once you're present, you can accomplish anything, right? Like what can you achieve if you knew you could achieve?
Yeah.
Right? If you know you can do it and you're present and you don't worry about failing or this or that. I read your site and there's some 10 things and you have this, but what are the main things that you hit on?
I'll tell you what my favorite way is.
Okay.
I call it the outside in or the inside out approach. So how to become present in the moment, it could start from the inside, and that could be like a breath, to come back into the body. And then you start really investigating all the places in the body, all the way through from the center, all the way out through the fingertips. And what I always cue when I start with the center of the body or starting from the inside out and starting with the breath is notice the places in between. So there's, your shoulder and there's your fingertips. But what about every place in between, right? To almost fill up the body with that breath all the way through the head, through the feet, out through the limbs, right? And then there's the outside in. So particularly for somebody who may be battling anxiety, it's not always the best idea to start with the breath. What if that induces just a panic moment? You start to breathe and it does work more harm than good, right?
Okay.
But if we start from the outside, pushing my feet into the floor, feeling where I'm sitting in my chair, pushing my hands into the table, I start to stabilize my body and I can slowly bring my awareness in, right?
Yeah.
So inside out, outside in. And I work depending on where the person is and their ability to tolerate what works best for them. But I think knowing you have two possibilities, the in to the out to the in, they do the same thing. It's the process of becoming aware that I think helps bring you into that present moment.
Yeah, the anxious part, it just seems like everyone is getting more and more anxious as there's more just information flowing to you, right? Like this is coming at you, this is coming at you. It's like no one can just go and do something now without 700 people knowing it and that that it's doing it, right? I've noticed that the most pressure is coming not from people to perform, but it seems like the pressure is coming from other people knowing if you can perform.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part. It's like kids can't say, hey, listen, this is who I am. This is what I do. I don't care what you do, but this is what I'm doing. And I always, over the last couple of years, stressing to my kids, you could control yourself. And the minute you can control yourself and continue to be a better version of yourself, you'll continue to grow. But if you look at how people are looking at you, man, it'll just shrink you. It destroys you.
Yeah, and I could feel it even in the way you started to speak about the anxiety. What happened? Your breath constricted.
Yeah.
Even just talking about it. Those tension levels changed in your body. That ability to access your truest sense of self totally shifted because the anxiety got in the way. The body tensed up. There really is a direct relationship between what is going on in our mind and the level of tension and where tension is held in the body. And that might be different for you than for me, but the correlation is there.
So when you have a high performing son that plays sports at a young age. So when that anxiety hits, and maybe the anxiety doesn't hit, maybe it's something, and maybe it's something where you hear, hey, this guy's really good, I'm not as good, or I don't know if I can do this.
The comparison.
Like the comparison. I think parents have to figure out, I mean, I think the comparison is I don't know what's worse, comparisons or Snapchat. They may be the same.
Right.
With Snapchat, it's basically
A different version
of
Yep.
comparison.
Yep, it is.
But I just don't know, like, what are your thoughts on how to get away from that? What are ways to take the conversation? When you hear a comparison,
When I hear comparison,
how do we shift out of there?
It's interesting because I don't want to take it fully off the table. I'm always good with something until it's not healthy for the person anymore. Comparison gives me perspective about where I might, stack up.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
But do we want to stack up at that age?
Maybe, but it also comparison can drive competition. And I'm okay with that too, to a degree. I'm okay with things until they're debilitating to the person and until they've shut down, until they're overwhelmed and they're not able to use that information,
Okay, so we're doing comparison and it's working, and all of a sudden it turns. How do you mold that conversation a different way? Like, what are things that parents can say? It's like, hey, listen, Johnny made the A team travel, you made the B team travel, or how do you say, well, I'm as good as him or I'm not as good as him? Like, how do you shift that? As soon as it becomes debilitating, how do we shift that conversation?
I like to bring it back to kind of what you talked about earlier, which is like coming back to you and being very specific about what I noticed my son did well, or even a kid on the team who might be comparing themselves and frustrated. I'd be like, well, that's interesting. You're right. Johnny did do X, Y, and Z, made X, Y, and Z team. That's interesting. And that's great for him. What I noticed you did today was amazing. You did this. You contributed to the team in this way. You threw the ball better than I've ever seen you throw the ball before. Your throws were more accurate. You've been really working on that. Nice job. Like, just allowing.
And that's one of your
that.
points.
Yes.
What's your website again?
Yes.
The Body Mind Combine.
Yeah, Body Mind Combine.
But then you also have an article, and one of the articles, when I was reading it, is that.
Yes.
And that is one thing that over the last 3 years, that I have shifted on.
Yes.
Is, okay, I'm going to sit here and listen to you bitch for 10 minutes, one of my sons, about X, Y, and Z, and I let them vent. And when they're done venting, I'm like, okay, but you know what I saw you do today that was awesome?
Yeah.
And maybe they don't want to hear it. Because a
Right.
lot of times they just tell me to, honestly, if James
can't
does
hear that
something
right
good,
now.
and I'll be like, hey, okay, you did this, but you did X, Y, and Z. They don't want to hear it. But then I notice 10 minutes later, they come back and they go, yeah, I did do that right.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, man. I go, that's you did. Don't worry about the other stuff. You did that right.
Here's another thought and I almost modeled this just with you a moment ago. My son, I hear when you talk about Johnny and how he does at baseball compared to you, it feels like you look a little sad to me. It feels like it's hard on you, right? Like, I notice these changes in your mind and body when you talk about Johnny. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how that makes you feel? You know what I mean? And kind of meet them where they are in order to sort of shift them from that place.
Oh, I like that. I think my sons would punch me, but I do like that.
Because
that's different.
Go there.
And you bring that up on your points too.
Exactly.
Like
and that's
the hug
part of that
and
co-regulation experience of I see you. I see that that's hard. It sounds like you're comparing yourself directly to somebody else. And when you do that, I notice your shoulders come down and you look like you're frowning and you're sad. And it doesn't seem to me that's the place you want to play the game from.
Yeah.
That's not the place you want to be in order to play your best.
Yeah, I like that.
Right?
I've always just picked out pauses, but I like let's share your feelings.
Let's be there together in that moment to move you from that place.
I wonder if boys can do that.
They can do it. Brooks does do that. He really, truly does. Because we're not giving them credit then for being in their feelings, and they are. They are. They just aren't used to being validated in it as much,
Yeah.
But
let's talk about
that moment where you see what me comparing does to me?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe I don't want to be in that place. Get them to ask those questions of themselves.
I do like that. I'm going to try that really soon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like that a lot.
Because they're already there, They're there.
Or it's in their head.
Yeah.
They just need to speak it out.
And when they do, look what I just did. Like, even feeling it, I just took a big deep breath.
Yeah.
And then it starts to like, maybe I want to move out of that. Maybe that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I do like that.
And then you can start to say, like, I don't know if this comparison piece is serving you, or maybe to some degree it is, and then it moves to a place it doesn't. But I'll tell you what, you're doing some great things out there.
What about parents that you see, maybe kids you're coaching, not I mean like coaching, but like coaching, like mental performance coaching, like the parents that are pushing these kids, like we talked about outside too, these 24/7 in sports and not giving them time to breathe and stuff like that. What are the downsides of that? And for a parent, what kind of space should they be giving their child? And I know it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
But like, I think there's at a point where, you know, a lot of us want to live vicariously through our children. I mean, that's a huge problem. And how, if the child isn't performing like you think he should perform, you know, we've gone over that validation, stuff like that. But I think that's a different, without poo-pooing on parents, I think that's a different parent.
Yeah.
I think what we just talked about
Yeah.
is someone that maybe has their head on straight.
Yeah,
But
right.
there's also
right.
another subsect of people that are coming out and they're just harping on their children. And I think that's creating, first off, a lot of animosity towards their parents. But at the same time, how does a parent step back and take that breath and say, okay, what do I need to do that I'm doing wrong?
Yeah.
You know, the comparisons or pushing or saying you need to do this, this, and this, and this. I just don't think it's correct. And how does a parent check themselves?
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I don't know how well received this tip might be by parents, but I think it's an important one. We have to recognize when we're putting pressure on our kids, when we're pushing our kids, whose need is it?
Yeah.
It's ours. It's more than likely it's our need as a parent. For them, you know, it's our unlived childhood dream, you know, it's
or us to be validated. Like a lot of times I think you're in a parental group and you're trying to validate yourself and the hierarchy of the parents. And you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah. And it's very much the pressure other parents are putting on other parents.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a microcosm of what the kids are experiencing happens in the parent space.
Yeah.
I have had to stand up. I have legitimately been parent shamed for making choices or supporting my kid in their choices not to play this season, you know. We're taking a break. You are, you know,
it's crazy.
Yeah, we are.
And I never realized it. Like I didn't realize it, you know, 7-8 years ago with Lee, but now that I'm like redoing everything again, I sit back now and I'll be sitting with a bunch of parents and me and Nikki will be sitting there and I'll be like listening to stuff and I'll look at it and go, you know, that was us 7 years ago. And it's just like you don't know you're in that and you don't know that it's overwhelming you until like you get to a point where you're like, when you have a high school and you're like, you know what? They're 6 and 7 and 8. None of this matters.
And you know what I do? I legitimately do this. When Brooks plays baseball and he makes like a kind of a bonehead play or it didn't go well, and I'm super mad about it because I know he could have caught that ball or whatever, I turn and I like let it all out. I did it as a coach and I do it as a parent, you know, and then I just discharge it. And I think I might have freaked out a parent the other day when I just let it rip. I was like, I can't believe this happened. He could have made that play. And I mean, I was not mental performance Shannon. I was parent Shannon mad, you know, and then I was like, okay, I'm done with that. I hit my own reset button. I did not discharge that on him.
Yeah.
You know, I did that in a completely separate space. And the conversation I had with him off the field was a totally different conversation.
Oh, man. Brooks was going down first base. And he was running to second. And, you know, I'm sitting down and just watching the game. And I heard you go, Brooks, you have to run.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so she gets on him.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, now how does that work? Because I know where you're coming. Like, I know what you do. And I'm I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, how, like, you can't be totally like everything is okay.
Oh,
no. You have to push.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
But this is what I was thinking about. I do my best thoughts in the showers. I'm thinking about this conversation last night. And I was like, you know, it's got to be a little different for you when you're talking about Brooks. And then I'm wondering how you go from Brooks and then go to someone who's not a high performer. right? Because
Right.
Brooks
Right.
is an outlier.
Right.
And you can do certain things. But then to shift that and talk to another person, is it hard?
No,
Like,
it isn't,
I
because you
was
want to know
thinking about
why.
that.
And this is what I think we all need to do. And it just goes back to the very beginning of this conversation is you're you and I'm me. I want you to perform to your best. You have to take it down to the individual. So I just recalibrate,
Yeah.
to that person and their goals and their gifts and their talents and what drives and motivates them.
Yeah.
And that's just not the same. So
It's tough.
high
Like,
performer
with
or
three
not.
boys, it's tough.
Yeah.
I'm always like,
Yes,
It's
recalibrate,
always like-
recalibrate.
yeah, it's tough. So
Because they're three different people
Yeah.
with three different sets
Oh.
of strengths and ways of being motivated and needs.
yeah,
And they're at three different developmental levels,
Yeah,
which is a
it's-
whole nother layer to
Yeah.
add into it. The way what you learned from Lee is awesome, but may not directly
Yeah.
play out because James is a totally different guy.
yeah. So I was wondering, like I was like, okay, well, it's like almost trying to be like a coach for this all-pro person, and then saying, okay, at the same time, I'm going to take these young kids and figure out, like, I know that I can't do this to them, so it just seems like it would be a little bit tough to do. But I guess
Yeah.
if you just, these are what your strengths are, let's focus in on those strengths.
And it was interesting. I had a conversation once with like a golf academy, and I really wanted to develop a program for them for their beginners, people who are just new to golf, and they kind of said to me, they're not ready yet for the mental performance side. And I thought,
I think that should come before everything.
wow, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why not really? Because why not marry them as soon as you're learning the skill at the very basic
Well, I would,
level?
if I walked, I don't play golf, but if I walked into a place, I said I wanted to learn how to play golf, the first thing that I think that coach should tell me, that pro, the course pro should be like, hey, this is a very frustrating game.
Right.
And you're going to have ups and downs. It's you against yourself. Don't hate yourself. I would think that the mental spot would be first and foremost. Like when
Right.
you drop a kid off for tryouts, it's like, hey, just do the best you, like the mental's first. Just do the best you can
Exactly.
do.
And I think that's why it goes back to your question of like, does it matter if they're necessarily a high performer or super skilled at that sport or not? Not really, because they're there and they're them, and they're who they are matters to me so much. And their gift to the team or whatever they're trying to get
Yeah.
from it, I think is really important. So just seeing that person. And also even my own son, who might be a little bit more gifted athletically in one sport, it's not actually ringing true for all of them. So I recalibrate his
Yeah.
relationship to one sport than I do another sport.
Not everybody's Jesse Owens.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
But you know what? I also wanted to take us back a little bit to what you started talking about the like 24/7 pressure.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to share a philosophy around that. Let's say somebody sprints. The sprinter has to slow down.
Yeah.
There's this model in the movement world about like exertion and recuperation. We aren't building in any recuperation time for our kids and for our athletes in general. And that is of concern to me, because we all have to exert and then recuperate.
Well, they say that, like, I'm an NBA junkie, and they always say that. They're like, as science has gotten better and training's gotten better, injuries have gone through the roof.
Right.
Because no one's just taking an off season and saying, I'm just going to let my body recover
Yes.
and recover.
Yes.
So they're like, they don't understand why we have so many more injuries, yet people are in air chambers and cryo
We have all the
freeze,
tools, right.
all this bullshit,
Right.
and people are just constantly getting hurt now, like instantly.
Well, and there's your mind-body relationship too. If not only are their bodies beat down, but so are their minds.
Yeah.
So they're in overwhelm. They're in the stress response. They're in the anxiety response. So their minds aren't even. Emotionally, they're not able to recuperate, much less their bodies recuperating.
At what point, to talk about the recuperation, at what point do you think the parent needs to say, I'm not going to tell you need to practice. Mm-hmm. It's time for you to start telling me I want to practice. Like, I'm just wondering, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's like at what point, like, that's a struggle between my three sons.
That's a great point.
Like my three sons, and they all did it differently, right? Like Lee was, I'm going outside. Will has just turned to like, I'm not going to ask you, I'm just going. Or I'm going to do this. Like, and James being 6, I'm like, hey, let's throw third to first and let's work on our release and our hop step and this.
Right.
But it's interesting, right? Because I have 3 boys at all different ages. It's like, you know, when is it your turn to be accountable? And there may not be an answer, but I always see people yell at people, time to practice. At some point, you need to be accountable for yourself. And you need to be accountable for how good you want to get. Because we can push our kids as far, like we can go 24/7. At some point, if the passion doesn't come through them and they don't hold themselves accountable, they're not going to be good. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
Because those people that have accountability, and this is a discussion me and Nikki have all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, he's 12.
Yeah.
I said, Nikki, I see 12-year-olds that get up and they do X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
And I said, when I was 12, I did X, Y, and Z. I said, so don't tell me people can't hold themselves accountable. Have you ever thought about that? Like,
I have, and I think that is something. His intrinsic motivation, his meaning Brooks's, my son's, to anything, getting him connected to his intrinsic motivation anyway is of importance to me for anything. It's a dance, right? It's a real dance. I don't ever want to push so hard that I kill the joy. Or that, and that make him hate something.
But is Brooks at the point where he's like, hey, I'm going to go outside and just hit the stick for a little bit? Because he's young to do that. I mean, that would be... Sometimes. I would say the other day when he made like he just totally missed a catch in the outfield and I lost my marbles over it. But, you know, to myself on the side. Not at him, luckily. But interestingly, he came off the field and at the end of the game looked at me and said, I want to catch more pop flies right now. He recognized what he did. And he is coming home more and more and more saying that. Yes. So again, I think it is, if we keep hammering our kids over and over with suggestions, we're never giving ourselves and them a space to evolve. We don't know where they're at. If we you don't, because they're just taking your orders.
Exactly.
That's what I'm like.
Exactly. Yeah. So I say sooner the better, give them space.
Yeah, some accountability.
If we say to them, hey, listen, looks like you're kind of interested in getting better at this sport, or I don't know, reading at school or whatever, writing or whatever it is. In order to do that, you do have to put in some time outside of school, outside of practice. Do you want to? You know? But always that choice is theirs. Yeah. Always. Unless you're being tested on it or whatever. But again, we have to also help them understand that will come with consequences, right? Yeah. So you may not make the travel team. Is that of value to you? Is that important to you? But do you see how much I'm saying you? Yeah. Like, not me is not me. This is not my agenda.
It was so interesting. Lee was pretty much always a starter in basketball when he was young. And then about 6th or 7th grade, people start to grow. Mm-hmm. And Lee's a late bloomer. He's starting to grow now, but he wasn't growing. And everyone kind of started getting 5'2", 5'3", 5'4", 5'5", 5'6". And they were playing for the championship in his travel, and he only got like 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And they ended up losing, and we were walking out, and he just looked at me, and he's like, I just wish I had more time to play, more playing time. Mm-hmm. I just looked at him, and I said, man, it's a zero-sum game. I said, the more minutes you get, you're pulling from someone else. And I said, and to pull those minutes from someone else, you got to be better than them. Right. And I said, just remember this. Like, I remember like it was yesterday. I was like, just remember this feeling. If you want to get more minutes, these are the things that you have to do. Mm-hmm. And you have to figure out. I said, I love you either way. Mm-hmm. I said, but you got to figure out if you really want more minutes. That's if you really want more minutes, there's a roadmap. Mm-hmm. And you'll get as many minutes as you want. And it was, an eye-opener for him. And then he started, and then that's when he started doing it himself. And then when he got to freshman year, and then you're playing on the basketball team, your baseball team, and you're looking at all these people, I said, listen, you need to get physically here. There's some people, and I say this, there's some people that are just athletically and physically gifted, just gifted. And I was like, the three of you are not 6'5", 6'6". You don't run 240s. I'm like, you're not there. I'm like, but you can get there. Do you want to get there? And it's a dance.
It really is.
It's a dance, like you said. And I had a really good conversation once with Lee's coach between 7th and 8th grade, who still coaches him. Jared's the best. He did a podcast with us too. We talked about travel, sports and stuff. And I said, and Jared looked at me once and I called him up and I said, man, he's not as quick. He's not this. He's not this. He's not this. I said, I don't know what to do. And I would love your take on this. And I said to him, when do I know that it's time to stop pushing?
Yeah.
And it just is what it is. And Jared looked at me and goes, I'll never forget it. And he says, let the game tell it. And it was like, and I came home and I said that to Nikki and she's like, yeah. She goes, Jared says, he's passionate. He says, the game will let you know when it's time for you to leave. And I was like, true. And that's literally been my motto.
Yeah.
To this day, it's like,
absolutely.
I just take, like, now I'm like, and I with your positive reinforcement, right? And your half pushing is what I do. I'm like, this is what you need to do. If you're not, and I always just quote him, the game's going to pass you up.
And I love that you built in sort of that you didn't, you gave him the reality of the situation.
You have to. Because
thank you for that.
Because
right?
I'm so real when I'm not real, my kids are like, F you, you're lying to us.
Right.
Like, they get in the car, they're like, I know I did this wrong. I'm like, yes, you need to do this. This foot was wrong here. You didn't box out. Like, I have to do that because I did that from I was so, I don't want to say hard, but I was so honest with them from an early age that they just smell bullshit when I don't do it.
Yes.
But I give them the roadmaps on how to, this is what you need to do.
And the autonomy and the choice.
Yeah.
The other point I wanted to make about that is occurring to me as I'm reflecting on what you're saying and some experience I've had, not only with clients, but with Brooks, is that sometimes what you're seeing, not wanting to practice, not engaging in all of the drills fully to the level they're capable of, is actually something else is going on. And often it's a confidence issue.
Yeah.
So let's not forget, right, that something else could be behind that. That if we don't investigate the why, we're doing them a little bit of a disservice, or sending them to someone like me to help investigate the why, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, come on, do it. And then we're like just pushing up against them. And really what I've learned in some occasions is it's like, but I'm not doing this because I don't think I'm good enough and I'm scared to fail.
Yeah.
And I need to get underneath that and help him with that. And then the skill's right there.
Is there a couple tools that you're like, okay, this is what we're going to start out with, or a couple questions that you ask that? Like if a parent sees that, hey, this may be a confidence thing, or kind of like with Lisa in the podcast, he's like, when you lose passion for something, it's normally because somebody's bullying you.
Yeah.
This or this or that. I always tell Lee, don't let anyone bully you out of a passion. I said, don't give, you know what I say?
Yes.
Don't give them the satisfaction of governing your life. That's what I always tell them. I'm always like, and I have some colorful language that I use. I'm like, F them. Don't let them pull that. So like, what do you, if a parent's like, okay, that may be what's happening, confidence thing, how do I get at it? How do you get at it?
Always. It's actually pretty simple. It's based on what you observe. An example I have is Brooks in hockey, where we noticed that he was cheating hockey drills, like wouldn't go around the cone and we were kind of like sitting in the stands so frustrated. And, of course, like kind of wanting to come down on him, like he can do these drills. Why is he doing these drills? Hey, you know what? I noticed today that you kind of you kind of did the drills, but like not all the way did the drills, kind of humorous too, of like didn't go all the way around the cone, didn't exactly do what the coach said. I noticed the coach correcting you a couple of times. What was going on with that? That's it. They'll tell you, they're going to be, and literally it was like,
I don't think I could get there in time. I wanted to do this and do this.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I see that in basketball sometimes. Like they cut the corner. I'm like, that's not the drill.
Ask them what it's about.
Yeah.
Don't project on them what it's about. Let them see if they can come to it, but it's based on what you observe.
Yeah. So let the kid kind of lead the conversation.
But like, it's essentially kind of calling them out, because you saw it and you are curious.
Yeah.
It's your curiosity about what you saw that gets them to be
it's not
curious.
saying you didn't do it.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, what, like, how did this happen?
Why
Like,
be punitive? What was it about for you? I'm just curious. I kind of believe you're fully capable of those drills. You know, you could do them. What was that about? Tell me more.
Yeah, I do like that. That's definitely...
Be curious.
Yes.
What you observe, what you saw, because they can't defute it. They know they didn't go around the cone.
Yeah.
They didn't go around. You saw them, you know? So what's that about?
I do like that. That's a really good way to kind of get them. And on top of it, you know, getting back to everything, it's kind of holding themselves accountable to the actions that they did.
And you're just the mirror.
Yeah.
Like, and I wasn't really coming at him about judgment about that. I want to know. I'm investigating what that's about. I'm not judging it. I'm curious about it.
I do like that.
Mm-hmm. Because the more judgy and the more punitive we are, they just resist and they back up, and it closes them off to us.
How are you handling non-sport stuff? So let's talk about, like you said, confidence in scholastic or confidence. I mean, do you run into things where people are like, I have a hard time meeting friends, or I have a hard time this. I always tell people, when you're confident, it exudes, not the nonverbal exudes, and people are just drawn to it. And people are drawn to that confidence, and people want to be around that confidence. You know, that's that leadership.
Yeah.
So what do you see in terms of non-athletic stuff when it comes to grades or it comes to friends? Are there things, and are there tasks, or are there exercises that you talk to parents about on that end?
Typically, I'm always curious about just what has led up to the lack of confidence in that. Like, something's behind that. You know, what was it? Just a recent past experience or whatever it was. Shame and guilt are rough emotions. You know, if those are behind any of it. I also have noticed that if we can open up the door as parents to say, like, you're not letting me down, they want to perform well for us. They want, they don't want to let us down oftentimes. So actually, I literally just worked with a professional artist about this, you know, where they might want to be like leaving the work that they're in right now, but like they recognize they need to talk to their mom about possibly separating from the professional work in the sport that they're doing. But it's so hard for them because they have, their mom is paid for it, you know, and all of this and that. Now, transfer all of that over to like school, math, writing, reading. I separate it into the have-tos, the things you have to do. Sorry, you have to read.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to read. I understand it might not be what you feel the most confident at, but I'm going to sit here with you. You know, we're going to work it through. Communicating with the teachers about that's also helpful. Like, we've got a confidence issue here. The behavior that you're seeing is really dictated by a confidence issue. I never look squarely at a behavior. I look at what's behind the behavior to see if I can shift the behavior. I also like to see if the person thinks it's a problem. If the person doesn't think it's a problem, or the child doesn't think it's a problem, you're going to get nowhere with it.
So you have to identify, hey, listen,
do
this
they
is an issue.
see this as an issue? Because if they don't see it as an issue, I'm going to find a workaround.
Yeah, I like the fact that you said it's not the problem, it's what's called the root of that problem.
Yeah.
And I would think academically it's a lot like
the same. The same rules apply. Same principles.
I mean, how many people are always like, and you know, and you know, do you think it's sometimes parents saying, oh, you have a hard time with math? I hate saying that to people. Like, don't say that, because then your kid's like, it's okay that I'm not good at math.
Right.
No, it's not. Like, let's just work on it, and you're gonna get good. I think
and we're not gonna like all of the things equally.
Yeah. I think I think a lot of it is so tricky because parents take a certain angle that they shouldn't take. They take that angle like, hey, you know, I have a hard time learning math, or I have a hard time this, I have a hard time that. Yeah, some people are 7 foot and it's really easy for them to dunk. Some people are 6 foot, and if they do a lot of work, they're gonna dunk. They're both performing the same thing. Someone just got there a little easier. It doesn't mean anything, but you can get there. I think a lot of times parents give those excuses to their kids, and the kids use the excuses to not perform.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sucks sometimes.
And I don't think that we're creative enough about the how we're learning. What if the barrier isn't you're really fine at math, you're just not being taught or learning it the way you learn best?
Yeah.
Because everybody has a way they learn best. This is why I love the mind-body connection so much. What's always with us is our mind and body, right? So are they able to learn and understand math in an embodied way? Maybe it's a little too cognitive for them. You know what I mean? Like, I think we also need to adjust to the learner themselves.
How much, this is a total 180, how many times do you find yourself saying, I need to create confidence? And by creating this confidence, I'm going to say, hey, it wasn't, and is this okay to do? Like, if someone has a bad game, someone strikes out, and you're like, James will come strike out. Well, you know, the ump was terrible. Half of me is like, okay, I need confidence. I'll be like, I don't want to say he's terrible, but I'm like, you know what? Yeah, a couple of those pitches probably were balls that weren't strike, and it got you into a bad spot, and that's what led to the strikeout. Like, I think you have to play that game a little bit, but at the same time, not being a crutch where like everyone sucks.
Yes.
Right.
It's everyone else's fault. Yes.
So like, it's like, you got to say a little bit, because that's how I think you create the confidence by saying, okay, yeah, that wasn't your problem. You're really good.
I think.
Is that okay to do?
Well, yeah. To some degree, maybe we have to play that game a little. But to be honest, I think confidence is created by controlling the variables you can control. Okay. So.
And just saying, listen, you can't do anything about the ump. Everyone else had the same ump.
Right.
When that opportunity arises, take advantage of it.
Swing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, what can we learn from it is where are they calling balls and strikes? What is this pitcher? And also, the best I can do is own that it is still my up to bat.
Like sitting with parents. And I really, this was like one of the big things that I wanted to get your 2 cents on and just get your thoughts and open conversation. Sitting with parents, the one biggest thing, and I did this when Will was in 4th grade. And I want to tell you, it took me about 3 years of turning it from what I did. No, he was in third grade. So by 6th grade, I did one critical error, and it took me 2.5 years or 3 years to unwind it. And the biggest error I made is Will went from the top team to a second team. And instead of me saying, these are the reasons you went down, and this is what you need to get better at, I said, you went down because that coach, that program is awful. They don't know what they're doing. You're this, you're this, you're this, and it's them. And I watched him turn to, I'm not doing anything wrong. They did, and I don't need to get better. And that was Yeah. I didn't realize that mistake till about a year. No, I'd say like 6 months into it. But that 6 months of us blaming other people, it was like 2 years to turn that around to the point that we had to take a season off because it was everybody else's problem and not his. And then all of a sudden, like lightly massaging, it turned, and all of a sudden it's like, I need to get better. And then all of a sudden he got back on that team. But it was,
because what does an athlete or a human gain from everything else being everyone else's problem?
Yeah. And then I'm sitting having been doing this for 15 years, I sit on the stands, and it's so crazy how many parents just sit there and blame the coaches, the programs, the refs, this and this. I just sit there and listen. I'm like, man, that's just the wrong way to go, because all it's doing is telling your kid that it's okay the way they are, which is not, I'm not saying like, of course your kid is fine how it is, but if you want your child to get to this certain spot, turning it around and blaming everyone else means that the child doesn't think that they have to change. Everyone else has to change. And it's the biggest mistake I ever made. And I see everyone do it.
Completely. And it's protecting them. And this is I think our instinct as a parent from having to feel really hard feelings.
Yeah.
And we need them to.
They need to fail.
Struck out. And he needed to feel that hurt.
Yeah.
And I mean, blaming the ump, you could almost diffuse that by saying like, wow, it's not, you're upset.
Yeah.
You are so upset. We have to let them feel that uncomfortable upsetness and be with them in that emotion.
Yeah, no one wants their kid to be
Yeah.
upset. It's a terrible thing.
It's doing a real disservice
Yeah.
to them, you know? I mean, certainly for their longevity in the sport, but in life and navigating all of the disappointments life is going to bring us, you know?
Like on an academics thing, like I was telling you, like Will's, like the school is tough that Will's at now. And when he came home and he didn't have, 100 or this or that, and he had things marked off, he was like, oh my God. I'm like, dude, this is great. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is real.
Yes,
Where you were was not real. This is how real stuff is. And I said, there's nothing wrong with it. Now you know what your teacher expects. Now just do it that way.
Right.
Like, that's it.
Right.
Now you know what you need to do. Hey, Will, now you know what to do. Now you know what to do. Like, I never had that with Lee. Lee's like, he's an outlier when it comes to that. But
Yeah.
Will's got it, but he never failed. And it's so terrible not to fail and to shelter your kid from failure. All you're doing is
Disappointment, fear, like
you don't
all
know how to
those things.
fight.
Yeah, like
What are you going to do when you go on the real world and someone's like, yeah, you didn't get the sale. And you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to quit. No.
And so I think that the answer to the question of the blame is really, I think it's checking ourselves on our instinct to blame. And you know what? It quite actually could be a fact. They probably did all those things that maybe caused Will to go down a level, right? However, what's really important about that is how he feels about it, how that felt for him, and those and like being with him through that, and not not fixing those.
But I had a moment to be like, this is under your control.
And that too.
And I screwed that up.
Yeah. I think it's
It was such a great moment to take failure.
Yes.
To take something that he was crying about and saying, what can we do to rise and like really get at it? And I always think about it, but it's great because I failed.
Yeah.
And I figured it out. And it's like, and I've used that now for even Lee, for everybody. It's like, hey, this is the card we're dealt. Let's figure it out and let's win.
Absolutely. And it was hard and we can come back from
Yeah.
it but feeling it. I just feel like we really protect our kids from.
I mean, there's so many people that just switch teams because they're like, oh, I'm not getting 20 minutes or I'm not getting 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, does your kid deserve it? Not in a bad sense.
Right.
And if he doesn't, how do we get those minutes? How do we get those swings? And that's the talk you're talking about. Hey, how you feeling? What do you need to do? The confidence, like, what does it make you feel that you're not playing 10 minutes or you're not getting enough at bats? Like,
Right.
and how do we fix that?
Yes.
And I just don't think parents want to have that convo, which is terrible.
Yeah, maybe you're saying that it feels like sitting in entitlement rather than sitting in the realism of the situation, which is it's hard. It's going to come with feelings. Here's what we need to do to get better, and letting them, you're going to play down this year. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to happen.
And my mom always says, small kids, small problems. It's better to deal with this failure now when they're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, than all of a sudden someone get to junior, senior year or college and all of a sudden they can't recoup from the failure.
Probably the number one skill that I work with athletes is self-regulation and their inability to self-regulate. The frustration going from 0 to 180 in a second, causing them to, on a basketball court, their movement gets wild. They're not in control of the play or the ball anymore. Their shots are all over the place because they're angry and they're upset. Baseball, throwing a bat, whatever it is, right? Building that space between the emotion and the reaction is huge. And if we don't start that now with our kids as young as possible, helping them regulate, and it is a co-regulation. I am responsible as a parent for helping my kid manage that emotion. I can't expect him to be able to do that on his own developmentally. Golly, even your senior, your high schooler, it needs a little support there, right?
Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah.
That's human nature, is to regulate each other, and not avoid that.
Yeah.
So really sit with your children while they're having a moment.
Yeah. And let's talk through it.
Yeah. be with them. Don't even try to make it better. It's okay if they have
No,
it.
making it better makes it
Yeah,
worse. My
yeah.
kids tell me that right away.
Right.
Shut up.
And maybe that goes back to our conversation of like, no, you did everything so great. It's
Yeah.
that sitting with them first and then nurturing that
Yeah.
positive.
All right.
as
Give
they're
me
ready
everything,
for it.
and here's the good stuff you did.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear it now? Okay, well, I'm going to just tell you it and
Yeah.
digest it and take it how you want.
But I gave you the space first for this to be crappy.
I think that's the main I think like everything that we're hitting on
Mm-hmm.
over the last 30 minutes is why parents don't like their kids playing baseball. Yeah. I've had Lee in the car and be like, this is the biggest mind fuck. Because there's nothing worse. You know, it's like
It's a
you
lot.
got to have a degree like you just to get into a car with a baseball player after a game.
Exactly.
Oh man. It's-
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a game of failure.
Can I throw a question at you
Yeah.
that I'm curious about? Okay, you know how everybody says like baseball's a game of failure? Is it ridiculous of me to want to shift that to say it's a game of opportunity?
Well, I know. I think that's what
Does that negate the sitting in the feelings that I just said was so important? But also, I want to say there is a next one. There's another opportunity.
It is. Here's the problem with baseball, and this is straight out of Lee's mouth. The problem is, it's just only about 3 opportunities every 9 innings.
Right.
If that. I mean, Lee plays third base. You know, not many people pull because you need a slow pitcher to pull, right? So you're only really going to get action there is if it's a fast pitcher and you have a lefty, right? And that throw from third to first is 128 feet. You maybe throw it twice a game. So when you make a mistake in baseball, the first thing you say is, I'm not going to get another shot. And that's the reality.
I know. I get it.
I don't know how you get past that, but
get
that's
it.
the reality of that sport. It's just like,
Yes.
and that's the main reason Will hates it.
Well, you might not get an opportunity that game, but you're playing a whole heck of a lot of games.
Yeah, but you sit on that.
You do.
When you know.
Because what I'm trying to do here is think about resiliency and how we can build that a little bit more so that one bad play doesn't breed another bad play. Whereas
Yeah.
like in basketball and faster moving sports, I get it. Like you're bouncing back quicker. There's another
Yeah.
chance. There's another chance. That chance is right in front of you. The space is longer.
I
in
mean,
baseball.
I will tell you, you're at a baseball game with me and Lee. Lee makes a mistake. You will hear me say, next play. And I
Yeah.
just say it in a monotone voice where he
Yes.
can hear it. And I'm like, Lee, he looks at me. I'm like, next play.
But you are doing it. You are saying like there's another opportunity. Because
play.
I think what I'm struggling
It's
with
just tougher in baseball because of the
It
time
is.
element.
But we're loving to frame baseball in the failure aspect, and I am not sure if that's helpful or hindering, and maybe it depends on the person, and I know that
I think
better
it's,
than I know
think,
anybody.
I think you do the failure part because you know you're gonna strike. You're not gonna reach base 7 out of 10 times. If you reach base 7 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame and you're gonna make $50 million a year. But if you reach base 2.5 out of 10 times, that's if you're successful 25% of the time, you're a good player.
Yeah.
And I think saying it's a game of failure is more of like, hey, that other 7.5 times, it's okay. It's meant to be. Now listen, that may be the wrong approach. You may want to be like, hey, I'm going to hit 400. Fuck Ted Williams.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and like I'm going to take this aspect at it. But I think there's so much failure in that sport that if you go that route, you have to have an ego
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is I mean, as Lee calls it, which I don't believe, but Lee calls it false ego.
Yeah.
I don't
yeah.
believe in that term, but Lee's like, I can't have a false ego. And I'm like, you need it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you need to know that, like, he always compare, like, we all compare each other at the house. He's like, you know, I can't take 7 threes like Will does and miss all 7 and take 7 more and thinking that I'm going to hit the next 7. He goes, it's just not how I'm built. Where Will's like, I'm going to take 14 of them. If I miss 14, the last 10 minutes, I'm going to take 14 more and I'm going to hit them. And then I'm going to shoot 50%.
And I think what I try to do, if I'm thinking about it, like from my mental performance embodiment place, my mind-body connection place, what I'm trying to do is increase their chances if they are embodied the next time they go up to bat, if they are fully connected. I had a player once tell me like, I can't even hear my walk-up song when I go up there. Like, I am so out. I am slumping, I am not doing well. So we really worked on, like, how do you get in present moment while you're walking up to bat so you can take in that moment? At least what we're doing there, a game of failure or not, is increasing their chances, right?
Yeah.
That they do hit because they're connected.
Yeah, and I always say, like, and I don't know if this is like that type of thing, but I always like, when you strike out, I'm like, I want you to I always say, Lee, I want you to tell yourself, oh, I made a mistake. I know what I did wrong. And next time he's done.
Yes.
And Lee's like, well, I may not feel that. I said, no, but if you say that mind part, that next at bat, you're going to be like, I'm ready. Because you're not going to walk up there even remembering that strikeout. You're going to walk up there saying, I know exactly what I did wrong. I should have got a hit. Here's the reason I didn't, even if it's false.
Right.
And it's on you. It's not on me. And I'm going to get you this time.
And I love that, because that to me just doesn't reek of failure.
No.
That reeks of comeback and
But that's a little, but hold up now. That's a little bit more of like, you're the problem, not me. I'm not holding myself accountable because I think in baseball, you gotta be like that a little bit. You gotta be like, that ump sucks. Because man, if you start doubting yourself in that sport,
Well, I will say, I think that's an important piece of it. Again, what can I control?
Yeah.
I couldn't control that call, and it was a pretty bad call.
Yeah.
So I don't feel as bad about that strikeout as I
that's
would
what I'm
about
saying.
the
So
one.
So that's why I want.
Agreed.
That's why I always say to Lee, I say,
Yes.
just lie to yourself. He's like, well, that's false. I said, no, but false confidence is confidence. There's no difference.
True. I mean, but
Because you're confident that you're going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to just like, when I walk in to take a listing appointment and let's say it's a home that I shouldn't get.
Yes.
I walk in there saying, I'm going to get this home. Now, I may think that I'm not, but my mind and my body says you're going to sign this agreement.
100%. And so, yes, I agree with that. If you tell your mind, like, I'm going to walk up there and I'm hitting the ball,
you're going to do it.
Now, ultimately, I want your mind and body to sync up.
Yeah.
I want you to feel that. I want you to recognize what shifts in your body as you tell yourself that.
Yeah.
I feel that power. I feel the tension level. Let's go. Because I'm not living in the anxiety of this next at bat. I'm living in the power and control of that next at bat in a good way. So yes.
And just,
Yes.
like.
You can change your mindset to change your body.
Yeah.
And if that's like, I'm ready, I'm going after it, I'm letting go of that last one.
And I'm just not going to worry about anything. Yeah.
Letting go all the time.
Baseball's
tough. I love it. So much.
I know. It's
I did play softball, if that helps.
Yeah. I mean, I played baseball like t-ball, like when I was young. And I'm always like, man, that sport is something else.
Yeah, that was my sport. When I wasn't dancing, I was playing softball.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. We've been talking for a while. It's been very good. I want to go over some of this stuff here. So first off, say your website one more time.
Yep. Body, Mind Combined. BODYWMIND. COMBINE. Body,
Okay.
Mind Combined. Really, that premise, the body and mind are.
Do you want to give any other way to get a hold of you? Do you want to, this is your time to say whatever you want to say.
Oh, yes. Bodymindcombined.com is great. Email is also wonderful. Shannon at bodymindcombined.com.
That's easy.
Yeah, it's all right there.
Shannon with 3 Ns, 2 in the middle and 1 at the end.
Shannon,
I don't know,
yes.
the way things people sell, there could be a Q in it or something like that.
I do work with organizations, individuals, coaches, parents, all of it.
Awesome.
I really do like working on all levels of the sport. And I believe in the health on all levels. So it takes all of us. We're all part of it.
Well, this was great. Very fun.
So much fun, Jason.
I know.
Thank you so much for having me in this conversation.
This is
I hope if there's any takeaways from today, I think accountability is kind of one of them. I think accountability is about present moment too, of like owning what me as a parent, what my needs are, teaching accountability.
I mean, to me, like I will, being in sales, I will say to everyone every day, like, like everyone says to me, how did you get here? How'd you get here?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, one thing, I'm accountable. That's it. If you can hold yourself accountable, the world is your oyster.
Yes.
Because there's only about 1% of the people that will.
Yes.
I'm like, there's no stopping you. If you can hold yourself accountable, you're a beast. I tell that to my kids all the time. I go, you want to be successful? I don't care what you do. If you're accountable, no stopping you.
I think it brings us back into who we are and our truest selves and our strengths and our growing edges.
And sports keeps you accountable.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's the one thing I say to parents. I mean, I just think every single child has to and should play a sport for one reason. You hold yourself accountable and you learn that other people need you to do what you're doing to make it all work. And kids love the locker room. Come on.
They do. I mean, and probably the last one I was thinking of that I think is just interesting for all of us to do is that tracking what's going on in our minds and knowing and being aware that it has a direct impact on our bodies. Just noticing that awareness in and of itself allows us to really appreciate that, like, these thoughts I'm having right now are affecting me here, but how? That's what we're not asking.
Yeah.
What are those changes that we're experiencing?
I agree with you.
And that is the first step in all of this.
I have those reset moments. That's my shower.
Yeah.
My deep breath.
Outside in, inside out.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I don't have to do 10 things in 1 minute. I go, I have a full day.
Yes, right. One thing at a time.
One thing at a time.
One thing at a time.
And you don't get crippled.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate everyone listening. We'll be dropping this in a couple weeks. You can always find us on Spotify, Apple, Buzzsprout, everything you want. Subscribe and get the podcast right when it comes out. And thanks. We hit over 4,000 streams this week, and we hit over 1,000 downloads, and we finally have over 100 people that are getting subscribed at all times. So thank you, and the feedback's been great. And enjoy September.
Thank you so much, Jason.
You got it.